Welcome to the Angels, Magic and Joy podcast. This podcast is for those who seek answers from above, guidance and magical inspiration.
Immerse yourself in the realms of magic, angels, fairies, unicorns, dragons, and so much more. I'm Kirsty Jandrell, and I'm delighted to be here with you today.
And I am Kate Latchford.
Hello, and welcome to the Angels, Magic and Joy podcast again for an extremely exciting episode today. Our special guest really does need no introduction, but in case you're not aware of him, then you're in for an extra special treat. Tim WHILD is an Ascension expert, an author, Atlantean, international speaker and crystal expert from Dorset in the UK. And he's been delivering amazing Friday Ascension updates and Monday meditations for years now, which are truly a touchstone for thousands of beautiful souls on the Ascension pathway, including myself. So thank you, Tim, for those. And he's also just last week released a long-awaited Oracle deck entitled Your Inner Light Forge. So welcome, Tim. Thank you again for agreeing to be with Kate and I today.
Oh, thank you both. Sorry, I'm just foraging for the. I'll find it in a minute. Don't worry. Thank you both for inviting me on. Much appreciated. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And your dedication to the service work of humanity is amazing, Tim. At this time of transition in history, so much gratitude for what you're doing. And when we were preparing for the podcast, you decided that it would be really timely to look at the theme of initiations and more importantly, how we can sort of meet them with ease and grace. So I suppose a great introduction would be to look at the concept of initiation, or perhaps dark night of the soul, as it's sometimes known, on the Ascension Path, and what sort of that means to you specifically, and also perhaps a little bit about how initiations can manifest and what you would consider to be their purpose, sort of apart from keeping us all on track and keeping things interesting, of course.
Yeah, keeping us on our toes in case we get bored. Yeah. Do you know what? It's such a huge field, the field of initiations, Kirsty. It's I mean, life is one big test, is it not? I mean, the second we were born into the third dimension, and the three of us here, we were all born into 3D. We were born before 2012, or born before the cosmic moment, the 21st of December 2012. And we would have signed the soul contracts and come down to this planet to participate in the Great Earth School. You know, with people kind of like go, why would have I have agreed to do that when I tell them that they'd have queued up for many incarnations for the privilege or the opportunity to actually come down here? Because when you're down here, the intensity and the spiritual growth is so fast track. And so I mean, that's just normal life. That's just like the kind of the curriculum of living and learning. When you step onto the Ascension pathway, the tests and the initiations and the way that our lives are kind of almost orchestrated in alignment with our path of learning is very much it's done, I see, on a vibrational trigger. So when people first wake up, they are usually kind of given a little bit of grace, are they not? Or they were anyway. You know, you'd wake up, you'd kind of stagger about, you'd find your crystals, you'd discover a bit of healing, you'd kind of just dip your toes into all of the different things, all of the different opportunities, all the spiritual modalities that are available nowadays. And initially, we are drawn to the pathway because we are wishing to leave the kind of the unconscious realm, the realm that does not see. It just exists as it did in the third dimension. So initially, it's almost like we're coaxed onto the pathway with, like, like a bag of sweets or whatever. Come along, it's really nice. They're unicorn flavored, and everybody kind of gets involved with it. But when we start truly embodying the things that we're learning, like, you can read as many books as you like, can't you? You can take all of this information in, but until you act upon the information, until you are tested upon what you have learned and what you have decided to do, you are kind of not qualified to move forward. So the initiations are formulated by us. We sit around a table with our team, our guides, and whoever it is who pre-planned our lives down here, and they are specifically formulated to support us to grow on our pathway. So growth usually requires some level of difficulty to participate in. And so we step through the gateways, we step through the initiations. And by my experience, they grow in increasing difficulty depending on how much we're doing, how much we want to achieve in a short space of time, and what the trajectory of our pathway is. I'd just like to add that I do see the initiations and the dark night of the soul as kind of two different things. Of course, the dark night of the soul is possibly one of the biggest gateways that we ever will walk through, but it's such a massive thing. The dark night of the soul occurs when the heart center first fully opens. And when the heart center first fully opens and it begins to go, I am going to function from the heart, it immediately receives a huge backlash from the ego, depending on how much the ego is invested into the individual's life. And so therefore that battle between ego and heart commences. And most of the time it is a dark night of the soul, because all of the previous ways of life will be stripped away. So it's like 1,000 initiations all cocooned into one experience. And that tends to be something that I see happening on a kind of a rolling ball basis around the world at the moment. The global collective heart center of humanity opened in 2018 at the Lionsgate, no less. And I can remember kind of staggering around in my garden going, what the bloody hell was that all about? Coming out the other end of the Lionsgate, and I just heard this very clear direct message from Archangel Metatron going, I've got some exciting news. Everybody's heart center has been triggered at a 5th dimensional frequency. I was going, what? How can this whole planet all have had its heart center triggered when they're all acting the way they are? And he goes, aha, well, that's the key to the chaos, basically, that all of these heart centers have opened. All of the egos have rushed to defend their space that they've been occupying for thousands of years. And therefore you are going to see chaotic, divided, almost schizophrenic behavior in people who are combating this rush of heart-led energy, and trying or beginning the pathway of resisting the ego and beginning to work with it as a friend rather than a controlling force. So that's how I kind of define the two. And the initiations are very much more a personal thing. You will step through your initiation gateways depending on what your responsibilities are here. We all have responsibilities, depending on whether we regard them as big or whether we regard them as small. We're all a part of this ascension process. So it's a massive field. There's so much involved with all of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim, for that clarification and distinction, because that is, massively important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like that resonates so much, and it's explaining, and I feel like it's kind of a message of hope as well, especially nowadays, that it's not a result of the darkness taking over, but rather opposite. And I love that you're sending that message. That really, really resonates with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. I would like to come back to Atlantean connections, and in terms of initiations, could you expand a bit more about that, and the remembrance of the fall, and what's the impact of the connection in the initiation and all?
Again, it's everything and nothing. Our entire world was forged from the repercussions and the energy that was created at the fall of Atlantis. So if you look at the world that we are moving away from today, what we would regard as the 3D matrix, the control, the division, the kind of the darkness, the shadows, all of the things that we can all collectively see quite clearly now. But before we could either comfortably ignore it or didn't even know that it existed. That world was formed 10,000 years ago at the fall of Atlantis. So Atlantis fell at the end of 260,000 years, having risen and fallen 5 times in total. It could not continue to exist as it did. The effects of having a continent such as Atlantis in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean was having too much of a resonant effect on the developing world around it. And also, we had all, some of us against our wills, made agreements to experience the next 10,000 years in the third dimension. It's whatever way you look at it, it had to occur. But there were some very specific players who stepped up towards the end of the Atlantean era, and they created the fall. I remember 9 people in total. And they sat around a table. They weren't necessarily bad people at the time. They were just making decisions that would cover their backsides rather than actually working for the good of the whole. And you only needed the action, a little bit of selfishness to come into the decisions that were made before the entire kind of 5th dimensional, the golden utopia that was Golden Atlantis and had been created, and they worked so hard to hold it, that just fell apart. It just disintegrated and it went downhill with the wind behind it. So these souls rose to a position or elevations of power, and when Atlantis sank, they kind of spread themselves around the world and formed secret groups or sects and all of these things that we are beginning to become witness to today. And I've got a very I've got, this is information I've received, take it or leave it, those of you that are listening. The people that were in power at the fall are still in power today. They've evaded the cycle of reincarnation through their own kind of nefarious kind of magical means, or whatever you want to call it. And they're being called back to the karmic table now. Hence all the fuss, because they don't want to go. Obviously, you know, they've either A, forgotten that they came from the light originally, or B, they are scared of the repercussions. So they've had this open invitation from the Intergalactic Council to come back. All of what you have done will be forgiven, but the world must progress as it is now. It is moving from a state of control or fear-based living into heart-centered alignment and enlightenment. The game's up. But still we see all of this hullabaloo around the world, attempting to kind of control people's frequencies. That game is well and truly over. I mean, if you want words of kind of like hope or positivity, it was never going to work. There was never going to be a situation where all of these light workers incarnate to planet Earth only to be then captured and have their energy kind of used for nefarious purposes. We are in the process of breaking out. And that's why the world seems and feels so chaotic at the moment. And all of the pathways that have come almost in a linear form from the fall of Atlantis, we're almost replaying the final days at the moment. It's almost happening over and over again with the same players, the same nonsense, the same division, the kind of, or even the hybridization of human beings, you know, the kind of like the DNA work that you can see going on. It's all coming up as shadow work. This is like global shadow work. We've got individual shadow work where you can kind of go off and you can dig and you can do your stuff, and you know, like I didn't used to like it, but it's become like a necessity of the pathway a little bit, really. But the global shadow work is what we are seeing going on at the moment. Everything has been revealed. There is nowhere to hide anymore. And that's where we are. So Atlantis is everything. because we are also holding that frequency, that fifth dimensional gold print that they created in Golden Atlantis for the future of our civilization on this world. And it's also nothing, because you don't necessarily have to be keyed into Atlantis to achieve ascension, or to, some people just don't remember it, they don't care, you know, Atlantis, whatever, it's another kind of something that happened that doesn't concern them. They might be connected to the stars, they might be connected to Lemuria, or they just simply don't want to dip their toes in there. But that's where we're going.
Yeah, wow, that's such a beautiful encapsulation of such a complex you know, overview, really. So thank you, Tim. And again, so encouraging. And as you were talking, I was just wanting to ask you, I remember you know, in Diana Cooper's book, The Golden Future, and you've talked about this many times, of course, there's a timeline given that, you know, essentially by 2032,
yeah,
we're hopefully going to be in a 5D vibration, or the majority of humanity will be. Is there, before we go into the next question, can you just mention how you feel we are? Are we sort of on track with that, do you feel, or do you feel we're kind of maybe slightly ahead or slightly behind? Just
we're
curious.
well ahead of schedule. We're actually really, we've I mean, if we were talking on a kind of like a higher being term, the Intergalactic Council, who are overseeing the entire process, the whole shooting match down here, are very, very happy with the progress that's being made. It's almost if sometimes it's moving a little too fast. I mean, the wildfire of people awakening around this planet has happened on a level that nobody could predict. The beautiful, or the most kind of, or the kind of the uncertainty of this 20-year window from 2012 to 2032 was that it had never been done before anywhere in the universe. Like, nobody has managed to kind of pull off what we're doing. And therefore, because this is a planet of free will, nobody could predict the outcome of what's going on down here. It's like, you know, things have they can constantly go off on their own trajectory. They can exceed their creative potential. Things can happen that even the most advanced third eyes from the higher realms couldn't even predict. So we're doing really well because we're holding it together. That's not being done from above, it's being done down here. So it's all of us. We're all pulling it out of the bag at the moment.
Yay. Thank you. That's that's a relief to hear.
Might not feel like it. There might be people who are listening to this that go, what is he talking about? You know, like, or I'm just getting hammered all the time and everybody's going mad. But you've got to kind of look for the points of light. If that's all you want to see, or if that's what you're programmed to see, or that's what you think, then that's exactly what you're going to have reflected back at you. But if you start looking for the positive signs, the actual quantity of people who are waking up, a lot of them are in flux, or they're in a state of resistance with themselves, because they have had the triggering, the awakening, the call back to spirit, and they're fighting with themselves. So a person that fights with themselves will inevitably fight with those around them. It's human nature.
Yeah, and we are seeing this, aren't we? I mean, irrespective of whether we watch the, you know, engage with the mainstream media or not, you know, even on a personal anecdotal level, we can see that. So yeah, thank you. So as we, I guess, as individuals and individuals within the collective, as we continue to sort of step into this self-mastery and sort of take that radical responsibility, really, for our energy and our vibration. Can we, you mentioned the you know, the Ascension Council and our teams of light, and of course we're all very interested here in our guides and our angels and our teams. Just wondering if you can highlight, Tim, any ways that we can enlist the loving support of our angels, guides, teams of light in guiding us through this process of initiations, and how they can maybe assist in helping us to keep this shadow work a little bit lighter than it has to be.
I always get laughed at by my lot when I'm saying like, right, this is out of order, I've had enough, and you can just hear them all like whooping with laughter. Basically, they find it funny. If that's my personal experience, my particular team, they can be kind of they're kind of quite military and just like suck it up, get on with it, sort of thing. So it's I do find that I'm driven quite hard, and the one thing that I do find, this is going to be quite interesting because a lot of you that are listening to this and you might resonate with this, when we're going through tests and initiations, when it's grotty, when it's gnarly, when it's kind of like it's hard going, you will probably or most likely find that your guides, your team, your angels will have all stepped back. They won't be completely out of the picture. They'll be kind of almost in a room. If you say the analogies, you're in a darkened room, you can see everybody stood round watching you protest and wriggle and suffer and carry on. But they are going to stand there and they're going to watch you until you actually develop on your own 2 feet. And this isn't the case kind of in the early days of kind of the spiritual awakening when people need a little bit more nurturing and a little bit more looking after. This is a treat that's kind of like allocated to the more advanced souls who've basically said, I'm ready to step up, like bring it on, universe, give it to me. And then we get it, and it's all kind of like snot and tears and complaints, and that's the process, because then all on the other side of it, we walk through the gateway, we achieve what we set out to achieve or we're being tested on, and there's just this huge sense of relief. And then I hear continuous reports of people saying, oh, my guides have come back, my angels have come back, but there's different people there and they're so much more vibrant. I can hear so much more. I can connect with so much more because we've gone up a level, basically. And that is the purpose of the initiation. So if you're going through it, the best thing to do is to sit back, acknowledge the fact that you're going through it, because the least amount of resistance will take you through the fastest. That's always the way.
Yeah. That's beautiful, thank you. And
Pleasure.
yeah, Kate and I always talk about our angels sitting at the bar, and saying, see if she's going to do this. Let's throw this into the park and see what she does with this kind of thing. So yeah.
We're always laughing, they're having pints, and then when it's really extreme, I'm like, Kirsty, I think they're having shots tonight, because really so extreme, it must be going on something heavier, really. And it's interesting because I find it with people as well, that we have the spirit guides team kind of the way we are, like let's say my ones will be like bubbly, like tricksters, like always funny and messing around, and the same you were saying, your son, they're kind of always the way we are. It's so interesting you're saying that.
Yeah.
And it resonates so much, the way you're saying, because we're going through those things, and when I talk with my friends and all, and I had actually tears in my eyes when you said that, because it's so true. They really step out, and sometimes I'm like, kind of turn it down, I can't take it anymore, and they're just like, and it resonates so much. So, and then again, it's coming back in a different way at the end of the day, and we do go through it eventually. It's always kind of, I feel like it's kind of, I remember when I was going through the delivery, when you're delivering a child, the only thing I remember, I'm like, I'm not gonna die from it, and even I do, whatever. So I'm like, kind of like, I either survive or not, like we will go through it eventually in our way. At the end of the day, it's like so much hope. Tim, really. Can you explain, going further down that road, can you explain how that incredible intake of light that we are receiving is helping us to shed this density, karmic patterns, beliefs that we're not in service of our highest good and for the collective, and how it can manifest in our physical, emotional, mental bodies on the surface that maybe don't seem particularly useful, or maybe it doesn't make sense? How can it manifest?
That's something. I mean, we've been receiving increased quantities of light since 2012. That's what's been the kind of the the catalyst for the ascension process. The term enlightenment, it's the freeing of the mind, or the kind of the shackles of the spirit from where we were previously, the kind of like the depths of 3D, right to where we are now, which is kind of like flying on a trajectory that we couldn't have possibly even predicted to have reached at this point. So the increases in light have a very profound effect, and it goes all the way through the spiritual body right down to the DNA within our physical. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, karmic, astral bodies, all of it is getting absolutely blasted with light at the moment, more than I've ever seen on this ascension pathway. If you look at it, I spoke about this a little bit in Wedmore on Sunday, Kirsty, if you remember as well. Kind of, I mentioned the X flares that we're receiving at the moment. We had 19 in 1 month. And they're still going on now. The photonic radiation that's coming in, the light. Whereas last year, which was also regarded as a very intensive year, there were only 13 over the top of it. So that's a very physical aspect. That's what's creating the kind of the anomalies within our physical selves at the moment, the mental, the emotional. Normally we are in receipt of a almost like a concoction of what the planet needs from the higher realms. It comes through from the 7 spiritual suns, all of the kind of the other aspects of the cosmos, and it's specifically designed to be what we need for where we are on the ascension pathway. But what I've heard recently, that it's just the gloves are off, it's all systems go. Okay, we're ready to hold that light. We're even if we weren't aware of it, we've been training to do that since the cosmic moment in 2012. But what's happening at the moment is a little bit different, because it's wave after wave of DNA awakening. Not only is it the DNA awakening, it will put our physical bodies into almost into and nervous systems into a state of shock until we remove the parts of our lives that are out of alignment. For me, it's constant. It's things like diet, stress, over exercising, all of these different things. And I think I've kind of done enough to get away with it. And then all of this came, and it's like, no, you're going to walk your talk, sunshine. Basically, you're going to have to be the vessel of clarity and purity that you tell everybody else that you've got to be. We've all signed up for this 5th dimensional frequency. Unless our bodies, our minds, and our souls are purified, we can't, because we cannot take that frequency in. If it's dense, it has to be alchemized, it has to be purified, it has to be cleansed before we walk through that doorway. And that includes all of the patterns of behavior and the wrong think, the ways that our brains have been programmed by living in 3D, via trauma, via the kind of like the hypnosis that was used to make 3D the effective school that it was. So there's all of this stuff going on simultaneously at the moment. It is triggered by the vibration of the light that comes in. Without the light, there would be no ignition, there would be no spark, there would be no forward movement. You couldn't even people in the 3rd dimension, back in the good old days of 3D, they ignited their spiritual connection by focus, by reading, by working, by bringing that energy in. It's a lot more difficult to reach. Now we're just being absolutely pummeled with it on a daily basis until we shift. It's the options for a soft path have been removed. Basically, it's all systems go. Okay, so that's what the light's doing.
Thank you, and I think I'm sure all of that, everyone watching this can resonate with that 100%. And yeah, pummeled. I like that word. It's particularly apt.
That's what it feels like. There's no downtime for integration anymore. We used to get these waves of light come in last year, no, the year before that, and you'd receive and you'd integrate and you'd have a little bit of downtime, and then the next one would occur. But now, no downtime. It's just constant. So, and we're evolving. We're, you know, to training ourselves to live in a state of fluidity and joy during that. We're doing it. We're achieving it. It's hard, but we're doing it.
And it feels also that for me personally, I feel that I have no option but to process that physically, because if I don't, that's when you know, the stagnancy really shows up in the physical body and usually emotionally as well. So I personally find I have to move my body to create space to incorporate that light and be in nature and stuff. So yeah, I'm sure
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
it is. It is. So thank you so much for that. We can't have you on, Tim, without talking about crystals. Everybody's favorite subject. Look at that beauty.
Yeah, this is Jophiel. This is my friendly travel skull who comes absolutely everywhere with me. So
Oh, hello, Jophiel. Well, I have his little friend here.
oh,
Yes, and he comes everywhere with me, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes hides. Yeah, in my handbag,
yeah, we're
especially.
talking about like hiding crystals. Nothing's more annoying, is it? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, my crystal's gone where? Then it just rocks up at the bottom of your bag 2 days later, sort of thing.
Exactly, I've been here all along.
Yeah.
So, you know, you are an expert in the field, and I wondered whether you could share with our listeners, our audience, how they can use these beautiful friends to help us to imbue a little bit more ease, grace, and maybe even a bit of fun into these initiation processes, please, Tim.
Now, I asked myself a question years ago, like, you know, why am I so drawn to crystals? I mean, I've been picking them up and filling my pockets full of them since I was a kid. And so I'd always be drawn to them, always. It's always been my pathway. And it wasn't until about 2013 that I realized that they weren't just something kind of shiny and attractive that we were drawn to. They were actually an essential part of our ascension pathway because, first of all, you've got to kind of look at what we are. Okay, so we have been in the third dimension. We're not in the third dimension anymore, but during 3D, our ability to reach up, to connect, to receive, to embody the higher realms was extremely limited. I mean, we did it, we achieved it, and we went through stages of awakening in the third dimension, but we were kind of seriously handicapped. We had like a reduction. We moved from 12 to 7 chakras at the fall of Atlantis, completely switching off all of our dials to the point where we would exist on this planet in a state of pliable inertia. That's the only way to describe it. So when we wake up on the spiritual pathway, naturally, I'd say probably the majority of spiritual individuals will be drawn immediately to crystals, and most of them won't know why. You know, I didn't know why. I had no idea. I just knew that I had to be surrounded by them. Now, a crystal will assist you to do pretty much everything that you do on the light path, but 100 times better. So you can reach up, you can receive, you can anchor information, you can communicate with the divine, or you can receive information that you are looking for, simply because say this crystal skull is carved from light smoky quartz. Not only does Jophiel exist in the physical here, but Jophiel, or the energy of Jophiel, exists in all of the dimensional spaces right the way up to source, oscillating at different frequencies depending on what space the crystal happens to be in. And it's the same with every crystal. I mean, I get asked a lot, what's my weapon of choice? And I'll always say clear quartz. Clear quartz is always the crystal that It can do just about anything. It can be amethyst, it can be obsidian, it can anchor energies, it can hold frequencies, it can radiate light, it can I mean, the subject of crystals is absolutely vast, but if you want to know how to use a crystal, switch off your brain. Okay, there is no real handbook for how to use a crystal. I mean, I could write a book on how to use a crystal, okay, and that would be my interpretation of how to use it, but it might not work for everybody. So the best thing to do is to pick up that crystal and almost just let go any of the preperceptions of what you are expecting that crystal to do. Just connect with its energy, open your heart, connect your heart to the crystal will connect to your heart center, and then it will work in a way that is perfect for you. If you observe how children work with crystals, they're not using their brains, they're not asking mum and dad, oh, what do I do with this? They are doing their crystal thing, and they will make grids, they will communicate with those that cannot see around them. They will just simply be with that crystal, and that's how the flow goes. Basically, your crystal will communicate with you in a way that's perfect. You might not hear the voices, you might not see the visions, you just might have a flow of knowing that comes through to you. All the answers will be revealed a little bit later, but I'll just tell a little story if you both don't mind. It's I first realized the importance of the job that the crystals were doing for me in 2014. I've always been, or the initial part of my pathway, again, Atlantean heritage, I was very drawn to crystal skulls. Crystal skulls were my thing, basically. I had to have as many of them as I could get my sticky hands upon. And I got 10 amethyst skulls. And it was my first kind of like, I've got 10 amethyst crystal skulls. And I was programming them all. I was programming them, I was bringing their frequency up to a fifth dimensional frequency by holding them, asking them not to take on any lower energies, cleansing them from their journey, just kind of standard procedure. And then I left them on the table all day. And during the course of that day, at the time, my youngest son was very small, I was very busy all day, just kind of running around doing household stuff. And at 7:30 in the evening, I got a message from a lady who I wasn't connected with on social media, I'd never met or spoken to before. And she said, "I'm so sorry to message you like this. You probably think I'm completely mad, but I'm a representative of the Pleiadian High Council, and they are asking me to tell you to pick up your bloody phone." And I was just like, what? What does that mean? And then suddenly, after thinking about it for a bit, the penny dropped. And I suddenly realized that the Pleiadian High Council, who she works with, had anchored into my crystal skulls because they'd been activated, they'd been left open to connect with higher frequencies. And from that connection, I then received information about the Blue Rose of Healing, which was included in the first book with Diana Cooper, and also brought through lots of information for several workshops that I ran back in those days. So it was at that point that I realized that a crystal is not just a crystal, it's an anchor point. It's how the higher realms connect in with us. And whereas they might not have a way of tuning and anchoring in any other way, if you've got a crystal, they will link into it. Okay.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Wow, that's amazing. It's gonna take me some time to process. It's amazing. I would like to come back a little bit more deeper into the initiation process and the importance of the community, of the people around. I remember for me, it started kind of 2010, 11, the dark night of the soul. And I would stay in that for years, and I would kind of not connect with anyone. I would stay in my own darkness for years. And then everything switched and I have so many beautiful people around. And I realized the importance that is actually the base for everything, other people as the reflection, and so on and so on. Could you expand a bit more on that, Tim? Like how can gathering in groups, either in person or online workshops, can help us ease through the process of initiation, and the importance of that, and what's it all about?
That's a really good point, actually, Kate. It's soul family's everything. We are not meant to be on this pathway alone. And many of us have felt like we've been alone for a long time, because we might have been navigating our spiritual awakening like you were in, say, 2010, 2011. And although there were pockets of light communities stepping up and gathering, a lot of us didn't have the access to it, or we didn't have the connections to it. Now, there is so much shared energy and so much importance in gathering together. Nothing beats a physical gathering. Nothing. You can recreate that online, and you can have an incredibly powerful gathering online. But we are humans. We are physical humans, and we thrive with connections. And not only do we thrive with that physical connection, that support, that unity, that solidarity, we are also shedding our previous connections, the ones that no longer serve us. So some of you might be listening to this, and your entire network of support, your family, your partners, your friends, even the people that you work with could have just been torpedoed out of your life. And it happens rapidly. I've seen it happen countless times. When you raise your frequency, you take a different energy form. You no longer look energetically as you did previously. You no longer sound the same. You no longer look the same. Everything about you changes, but you are still you. You are becoming the more defined, the version of you that you incarnated to be. But many people fail to recognize that, because it is triggering opposition within themselves, or they're not ready to take that step. So they no longer understand your language. They no longer understand the decisions that you make, or the interests that you have. And it can be, or it can feel very destructive, because it will put your relationships, your friendships, your marriages, your workplaces completely to the sword, if these people are not meant to step into the next part of your pathway. They might come back at a later date when they're ready and they've woken up, but for the time being, we have to go through that. We have to go through that shedding. And it's only via the connections that we're having now, these really powerful soul connections, when we gather in groups together, or we gather online, and we can feel that support, that energy, that solidarity. That's where it's at, because we are designed to be a light community. Okay, when we're coming together, you hear the catchwords unity and oneness all the time. We are always going to retain our individuality. We are here on separate missions, but the separate missions serve the whole. And as human beings, we all desire and deserve love, completion, affection, unity. And so that's where we're relearning how to relate to one another, but at a higher level now. So that was not in harmony with you will fall away. And what is in harmony with you, once you've accepted the change, will step in very rapidly. So it's everything at the moment. That's where we're at.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Again, I'm sure that will be so reassuring for so many people listening, who do just think, well, what have I done?
Where's everyone gone? You know what I mean? Yeah.
But it is so beautiful, isn't it, when everybody, it's almost like, I always see it as sort of little points of light all around the world, kind of just coming together now. So it's beautiful.
There's thousands and millions of people who are waking up to this, and they need what we need. It's that, that guiding light, not necessarily someone on a soapbox telling them that they're the way that they're living their lives are wrong, or that they need to process what they're processing faster, or that they're silly for not understanding it. Just understanding. We need to be understood and loved as human beings. So yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. And sort of feeding into that, Tim, you mentioned, the concept of well, not the concept, but the phenomenon of unity, of oneness, which of course is what it's all about. And this concept of sort of divine union within ourselves, so that, you know, we can reflect that outwards and all ultimately unify, seems to be of more and more importance, rapidly so. You know, and we have seen very importantly the rise of the divine feminine now within all areas of the world, really. And now it feels particularly poignant that the sacred masculine is now being called in and welcomed in to sort of stand beside that energy, both within ourselves and, you know, within the wilder global collective. And yeah, I'm just wondering, what does this divine masculine look like? How do we recognize him inside? How do we recognize him outside him? What do you see that? How do you see that playing out, really?
Now this is where things are going to get a little bit tricky, because there's going to be a lot of preperceptions about what people want from their divine masculine warrior, you know what I mean? But he's certainly not going to be staggering around at the bar at Wetherspoons sort of thing, kind of like it. But then again, they might be. This is what we've got to be very aware of, is the potential to be predetermined in what we're looking for, but also judgmental of those that are out there. Because what I'm seeing is a lot of ignited divine masculine souls that are stepping into their roles, but they might not necessarily be drastically changing their behavior. They might not suddenly be putting on purple robes and wafting around Glastonbury, or going to crystal workshops or anything like that. They are simply going to start to feel the very powerful promptings to change their thoughts, their words, their deeds, and their actions. Now, I mentioned this on Sunday because it's quite an important thing that's going on. The divine feminine has always had a bit of a rough ride, particularly from the 3D matrix. At the moment, there's an extremely concerted push to bring the divine feminine back to heel again. And this is being done by those that know that this power is just getting out of hand on this planet. You know, there's this wildfire of divine feminine energy is just igniting all of these powerful souls. And I've always seen the darkness serving the light. So all of the things that we've witnessed and that we've experienced, particularly in the last 4 years, have simply been catalysts for awakening. So everything that's occurred on this planet, but despite how uncomfortable they might be to witness or to experience, they are designed specifically to wake people up. So with this kind of almost concerted attack on the divine feminine, what we're going to see is we're going to see the divine masculine moving into protective roles. They're going to be literally pushed by themselves to do so. It's a natural instinct. Okay, you know, if you're looking at kind of role stereotypes, divine masculine is a protector, it's a pillar of strength, stands in integrity, speaks the truth, protects those that cannot protect themselves, and ultimately will be brave in the face of adversity. So we are seeing that beginning to rise up. And but it has to have a catalyst. Everything has to have a catalyst. Everything has to have like a good boot, or kind of like a spark from the lighter to create it, because that's the way that this world works. It has to be ignited. It has to be kind of moved along, because we spent so long in the third dimension. So all of these divine masculine souls that are waking up into their warrior energy, they might not be recognizable in the way that we as spiritual beings would expect them to be. But believe me, they're there. They are beginning to step in. They're beginning to occupy their roles. And some of them don't know what's going on inside their own heads at the moment. Some of them are just waking up and they haven't got a clue. They don't even realize they've done it. They just changed the way that they do things, the way that they think, the way that they speak, what their priorities are. And this is the beautiful part about this ascension process. Expect the unexpected, basically. It's how it works. So
Oh, I love that, especially expect the unexpected. But I feel like regarding the divine feminine and masculine, there's a lot of illusion around it. It's kind of, could you expand maybe a bit more on that? Because I meet like so much divine masculine around, but I don't feel it in my heart that it's about, I feel it's more like an ego talk. Could you expand more about that, like
yeah.
about this illusion around it? Because I've met good few, and I'm kind of like, first is, it's wow, wow, so awake, so wow. But then something pulls it back, and I feel like it doesn't resonate. Could you talk maybe a bit more about this illusion around it as well?
There's always going to be the illusions that we experience, because then a lot of the time we do have to kind of hone our ability to see, to discern. So there's, you got to kind of differentiate what might be a personal test for you to actually what's going on out there. Definitely there is a huge amount. I mean, we all know at the moment there is almost like a calling out of false light spirituality, where we're seeing kind of I'm going to call it as it is. You're like damaged people, like making out that they have this kind of like this perfected sheet, this divine role with butter wouldn't melt, they've done nothing wrong, but in actual fact they've got an incredible amount to work on. The beauty of where we are at the moment is that there is no more hiding these behavior patterns, these traumas, because these are behavior patterns ultimately come from trauma. That's where the majority of things kind of rise up from. So it's going to require patience and discernment via the divine feminine, not to kind of like take everything on face value. And secondly, just as much distortion lies in the divine feminine field as it does in the divine masculine field. It's a case of finding out, who's holding the kind of like the most of the purity and rolling with it. And everybody's got their own stuff to sort out. Everybody's got their stuff to work through. All of us are kind of a work in process at the moment. Again, it's down to what we're expecting from those around us. But it's that and I'm going to just touch on this very briefly, that kind of the distorted template of what was previously regarded as a divine feminine and a divine masculine union. People recognizing one another from a past life and assuming it's a twin flame relationship, and everything kind of just basically goes into kind of trauma and destruction from that point onwards. I mean, the way that I see the divine feminine and the divine masculine role, it's not based in the kind of the unification of the sacral. It's about the support network that we receive from each other as we step into our own divinity. They're very, I think we sort our templates out first, and then we can think about the relationship sides afterwards when we've got our slate clean. I think that's how I really see things working at the moment.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I would like to come back, obviously. As you can imagine, the energy and the frequency of joy is one of our favorite things here. You would never guess, I suppose.
Yeah.
And coming back to the role of that frequency of joy, as well as ease and grace, having the path of ascension. And personally, I would experience that for years, dimming it down, thinking that it's something, trivial, even indulgent, especially focusing on the shadow work and all the goodies. But I personally feel like it's really, really powerful, and it's like the most beautiful thing that there can be, the frequency of joy. Could you expand more on that? What are your views on that and the importance of that?
Joy is a work in progress. We've got a kind of like 1,000 reasons to be kind of troubled on this world at this moment. It's something that you've got to pick and you've got to hold on to, and you've got to work on it. You have to we have the opportunity to reprogram ourselves into a state of joy. Joy is a natural, it's our natural heritage. It's an emotion that we've been programmed by society and the world that we lived in to be fleeting, to be created by artificial constructs, to be something that, you know, only happens if as a reward, or when in actual fact we deserve to live in joy, harmony, peace, love, unity at all times. But we have our own programming to work through. So joy for me is a personal, it's a daily routine to bring myself back into a state of joy when I get kicked out of it, because it can happen 1,000 times a day. Sometimes you can like be, I'm gonna, you know, wake up in the morning, feet on the floor, breathe into your heart, grounding, hey, I'm gonna be joyful all day, and then bang, something comes along and there's the unjoyful truck runs you over, sort of thing, and and then you have to kind of like basically pull yourself back up again and choose it. So it's a choice. It's a choice that we have to install into our consciousness at this moment in time. And so it's our natural state. It's what we should be experiencing. So I see joy as a choice and a work in progress.
Thank you. And I know that Kate and I absolutely are on the joy truck as well. And it's, I know Kate and I have spoken about this before, but you talk about it being so true, that it's a natural state. And Kate and I often look at our little cherubs, our children, and their natural state is, you know. My daughter's my biggest teacher, one of my biggest teachers, because she's a consistent reminder to, Mummy, look at this flower, look at this caterpillar, you know. And it's, yeah, and as you say, we've got all of these programs to work through. So yeah, let's keep up that work.
Absolutely. It's something that it's the way, it's where we are. It's where we are. There's, like I say, there's 1,000 reasons not to be joyful, but there's a million reasons to be joyful. So pick your pathway. That's
absolutely. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, Tim, we come to one of our favourite questions. This is a question that we ask to all of our guests to keep it a level playing field. And I know that you will have I'm sure you will have a plethora of things to choose from. But could you please share with us and our listeners one or maybe a couple of your most magical, angelic, or even joyous moments that perhaps been so transformative that they've shaped your path, you know, and made your life what it is today, please? It's a big question, sorry.
It's a big question. I'm just thinking of it. It was, I think, the most memorable thing that ever happened. And when I think about it, it could be a dream. Now, I have to double check with Diana Cooper to make sure it's not a dream. Was in September 2008. I'd just been through a huge life change, and I'd been visited by Archangel Michael in my room when I was trying to meditate, and he said that, you know, you're a high priest in Atlantis. You've got a massive pathway ahead of you, but obviously it's going to be a little period of time before this kind of light comes to fruition. And I went to see Diana Cooper that night, and we sat and just had a little bit of dinner in the garden, and she began to receive information from Archangel Metatron about me at the time. Every time I come round, he was kind of doorbelling her in the ear and giving her downloaded information about my past life and what I was going to be doing, and all of the other stuff. And as she was talking to me it was a beautiful September evening. It was really warm. The sun was kind of shining and setting. And as she started to talk, feathers began to fall from the trees. And I kid you not, at the end of the evening, and I was only there for an hour and a half or so, she walked around the garden and counted over 400 feathers that weren't there previously, that had fallen as we were talking. And it feels and looks, when I memorize it, like a dream. I was in a bit of a dream state anyway at the time. I was kind of almost in a state of that shock awakening, suddenly realizing that things are just never going to be the same again. But to just see all of these feathers falling from the trees was just, you couldn't make it up. And so I checked with her a little while ago. I thought, I didn't dream this, did I? And she went, no, you didn't. And she tells that story to the day. So that's one of my bestest memories, I think.
That is so gorgeous. That's show me a sign. Go on. Oh, and another one.
Have a few of them.
Like, there you go, in your face.
Yeah, get covered in feathers. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you so much for sharing. And I feel, apart from, you know, the verbal part, I feel so much energy coming all around it, and I feel it's going to unfold in many different ways. I feel like I'm going to listen to it a few times, and it's going to
Oh,
unfold
bless you.
loads of different things. So thank you so much. And to conclude, because I know we need to finish at one point, even though I wish we could just stay all day and chat, because
Oh,
so
bless
much
you.
to
Yeah,
discover.
likewise.
How can people get in touch with you? Is there any events that are coming up that you would like to share? How can people get in touch with you? How can we get more from you?
Well, the best thing to do is have a look at my website, www.timwild.com. I'm going to be in Birmingham on the 10th of June with the wonderful Kelly Vikings. That's going to be kind of like a talk presentation, but if anybody wants a full day's workshop, I'm going to be in Emsworth on the 4th of August, getting warmed up for the Lions Gate. That's a full day's workshop, organised by Kate Rawding. So that's going to be my next port of call. And got online stuff going on as well. 4th of June, I'm going to be with Lavisa Alvtorn. And I've got my Sunday night Ascensions coming up as well. So 11th of July, I'm with Alice Heath. So yeah, got lots going on. But if you want a physical gathering, like a full day's physical gathering, the 4th of August, getting warmed up for the Lions Gate in Emsworth.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I just have to say, if you ever have the opportunity to go to an in-person event with Tim, take it, because it's such a beautiful experience, and you'll meet so many beautiful souls as well, I'm sure, and that they're so powerful. So
Lots of yummy people will gather together. We always have good fun, don't we?
yeah, absolutely beautiful. So thank you so
bless you.
much.
Thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you. Wonderful questions as well. Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Kate.
Tim. Yeah, as you say, we could talk all day, but yeah,
Very easily talk all day, actually. Keep me happy that way.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope everybody has a joyous rest of the day, or rest of the evening, whenever you're joining us. And yeah, thank you.
Talk to you all
So
soon.
much love.
Lots of love. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.